At the beginning of the film, you talk about your name being Star, and you say, "Don't ask me about the second R." I'm curious, and I obviously can't ask Star that question, but as the actor who plays Star, what do you think that R means? Like, did you ever build that in? Do you know what the second R, or why that was put into the name?
Yes, I do. Well, I think the reason why Star says "Don't ask me what the extra R is for" is because she's tired of explaining her name to people, especially people who have a tendency to, I guess, stereotype black people or trivialize the fact that they are creative with their names. Like, we like to be creative with our names. But the extra R, I'm trying to remember. Me and Angie talked about it, and it's specific. I think it's another Tupac reference. It's supposed to represent, man, you might have to ask Angie Thomas about this because it's deep. Ask Angie too.
It doesn't have any meaning in that sense. But I named the character Star in homage to Tupac.
That's okay.
Yes.
We were trying to figure that out just now.
Yeah,
because she said she had a conversation with you about Tupac, but she couldn't remember the exact meaning. So what's the meaning there with Pac?
Well, Pac was a huge fan of Van Gogh's painting Starry Night. Oh. And he wrote a poem called Starry Night. And he said that if he ever had a daughter, he would name her Star. And so he never had kids. So I named her Star in honor of that. And plus there's the idea of light and darkness. That's what a star is. But the extra R has no meaning at all. It's just, I think Maverick would have done that, and I think Pac would have just done that to be different.
Oh, that's amazing. It really is. Yeah.
Because we talked about this early on. But it's something that Mav added on intentionally to give her additional power, I guess. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Now, I love the scene in the car when you two are having that Harry Potter moment. And like that obviously becomes kind of a through line to the film. And it's a really amazing moment. I'm just, that scene is very hard to watch, but it's also a beautiful scene, the moment you share in the car before the tragedy happens. That day you shot that whole sequence, like that up and down of that sequence, and you leave set that day, are you able to come back down from it? Are you able to go back to your normal lives and just, or does that stay with you for a while?
Nah, it stays with you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and for me, it was probably a lot harder for her than it was for me because she had to bounce right back from that and then go back to doing other scenes. For me, it was just like, I think that was probably my last scene that I had to shoot, so it was a little easier for me to decompress. But she had to jump right back into it, so I could imagine it was just like 10 times tougher.
It was tough. It was really tough. Because these are real events, and so we wanted to honor them. And I felt like, as an actor, in order to honor it, I had to believe it as much as I possibly could. Yeah. So we shot that entire sequence. We spread over a few days. So we shot our scene in the car one day. Yeah. We shot the actual being pulled over by the cop another day. We shot the death scene another night, and that night was particularly heavy, of course. Angie Thomas was there watching, and she was bawling her eyes out. And I got to like a place that was like really dark for sure, and definitely could not shake it immediately. I still, even when we went back to Atlanta for reshoots, couldn't drive past the spot where we shot that scene without kind of losing it a little bit, because not only could I as an actor put myself in a position where I believed it, but there's video footage of these events happening in real life. Like Philando Castile, we have a full video from multiple angles of that murder happening. So I was thinking about those references as well.
And last question for you about, you mentioned in the movie that you have two versions of yourself. One at the school and then one back at home. Do you feel in your real lives that you have two versions of yourself, whether you're doing, because you're acting, so you play different versions of different characters. Do you feel that same vibe in your real life as well? Do you feel like you have different versions of yourselves in different settings?
I think I have probably a million versions of myself.
So which one do you want?
Yeah, which one? I have a million versions depending on the setting, and I think that's also the result of having grown up around so many different types of people, and learning how to code switch depending on the environment that I'm in. So I don't even think I'm cognizant of it at this point, but I definitely shift depending on who I'm around, how I feel safe and comfortable, how I feel like it's most natural for me to interact with whoever I'm speaking to.
Sure. I think that's normal though, being able to just become all things to all men, just like a chameleon, but not compromising or selling out to your true self, but still knowing how to adjust in situations.
I have a question for you, and this is a question that I'm so fascinated by performance-wise, actor-wise. The scene when you give that speech as the children are going through the 7th point on the Black Panther list. At the end of that scene, you are so emotional. Like your lip was genuinely like quivering, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there. I never felt more immersed in somebody performing something. I felt like I was there, and you were talking to me. So I'm wondering, like, I know you don't plan something like that because that probably just happens emotionally. But can you talk about where you were at the end of that shot emotionally?
You were feeling what I live. You were feeling what other, men in our community live, and so. I just wanted to, invoke that sentiment, this Maverick is a representative of, a lot of brothers and a lot of Black men in my community, that was raised by, that I saw growing up, and I'm telling their story, and so it's just something. It's as an actor, you just bring what you got. You know what I mean? Like, you're right, you don't prepare for anything like that. It's just what you have inside.
But man.
Yeah.
I had actually threatened him. I said, I want to go home and rap early.
Okay.
If you don't get it right, I'm going to fuck you up. And what you saw was that fear.
You better get
look at him. He's scared now. He's scared now.
I'm scared.
But it was, she was over there in the corner going,
She's a really giving actress.
Yeah. Speaking of character choices, I was curious. We see a scar on your neck in the movie. We don't get explained what that scar is. We just assume it came from something that happened within the neighborhood, whatever was going on.
Right.
Do you build that story in? Do you know why he has that scar?
It's something that George and I talked about. The idea of what he had been through, what he had seen, what he had experienced. The idea of potentially losing your life either goes one of two ways. It gives you an appreciation of life, or it gives you the opportunity to, not care so much about, because you've already seen death. You're already supposed to be dead, so what's next?
Wow, that's amazing. Now there's a great scene with you and Star where you're talking about what the infidelity element and the idea that your character had cheated on you, and you say this great line where you say, I loved him so much I was able to forgive his mistakes. And to me it was just such a powerful moment. I'm wondering, just as an actress, kind of delivering that line, delivering those scenes, what that moment meant for you as an actor, because to me I understood why she made the decisions she made. So you're conveying that to an audience. What was that like for you to shoot that moment?
It was wonderful because I was talking to Star, my daughter, and there are those lessons as a woman where when you're in a long-term relationship and in life, your capacity to forgive has to be huge. Yeah. As a woman, that is a muscle that we exercise from the time we are young throughout our life, and I think it was also important for her to know the kind of love that her mother and father had, that Mav and Lisa had, that he made a mistake, but that their love was bigger than his mistake. And it symbolized to her, his humanity, but their strength.
But what she didn't say is that, Mav bought her a quarter-carat diamond ring.
Quarter-carat.
This
quarter
is true.
Carat. Did you see it on screen?
How did I know?
You were like, was she married? That ring was so tiny. I forgot I was married.
That's the real reason she said that.
Caring and sharing.
Caring and sharing.
Wow.
I shared a quarter-carat. Yeah.
It was little.
That's all I could do.
Yeah.
I'm saving up glasses to see my quarter-carat. It was tiny. But you know what? He gave it. He married.
Why can't we have you glasses? I can't afford laces.
One of my favorite moments in the movie is when you're looking at Star and you say, I see you. And it's powerful because at first you say, I don't see color. And then she's like, no, I want you to see my blackness. And you say, I see you. And to me that was a powerful line because people want to be treated equally, but they also you still want to see them for who they are. Can you talk about that moment specifically and what that meant for you as an actor to perform that scene?
Yeah, me and Amandla, we shot that. So I don't know if you were kind of a little bit there that day, but we spent so much time on that scene, probably like 6 hours with George shooting that. But yeah, that is the wake-up call for Chris, where he is finally, it's the start of his journey of seeing her for who she is, and he's never going to be able to understand racial injustice on a visceral level until he personally connects to it, and when he's surrounded by it in the riots and stuff, that's when he can finally see her for who she is.
Now, one of the things I think about this movie is it touches on so many things that are happening right now, obviously the timeliness of it, and then we're seeing images of people who really went through things like this in real life. Now that you've made this movie and you see things in the news, how it already affected people emotionally in general without seeing the film, but now making this movie being a part of the story, how differently do you watch these news stories now when things like this happen in real life?
You know, I think, you know, once again, it's just really great to start a conversation about it, you know, just because these things are happening. It's happened and it's still happening. It's just really great that films like this are being pushed to the forefront and people are getting to see this. And yeah, I mean, I think that's just like the most important thing. And, you know, it just kind of just like breaks my heart when I see all these things happening to people of, like, you know, color and minorities and getting shot and killed by police officers. And, you know, it's a big theme in the film. So I really hope that people see it and are educated.
Yeah. And for your character, she says things that she doesn't realize are coming off negative towards her friend. And it's an interesting element to watch because part of her, she's saying things in a hateful way, but part of her maybe doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't realize the things she's saying could hurt Star's feelings. Can you talk about that element of your character and kind of that balance you play as her friend, but also kind of revelation your character almost has?
Yeah, there's so much. I felt like I was playing like a character that is complex but has no idea that she's complex.
Right.
It was so strange because she really, I had a hard time finding the reason behind why she said what she said and did what she did, because I don't think it ever crossed her mind.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I kept saying from the beginning, like, she had to be a character that Star liked at some point in her life and that Star loved and felt comforted by in some weird way. But obviously you see as they grow apart, like, the reason that Star is able to understand her voice and who she is by seeing, like, she's growing apart from people. That's a huge part in growing up. You realize that some people don't belong in your life, and that shows how strong a person is if they can cut them out of your life.
And I feel like our characters were kind of similar in that way because
yours was nicer.
Yeah, but Crystal said things that he didn't realize could be almost disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because of pure ignorance, and I feel like.
But it came from a good-hearted place. I would
say. Yeah. He has good intentions, but I feel like those kind of comments, like we're all the same, come from him not being aware of his own privilege.
And I feel like that was a huge, also, sorry to interrupt, like, for Haley, and you don't see at the end of the film, but, like, I think that that's what they hope, like, in the scene with, you know, Star and Haley, is you hope that that's the moment that it kind of clicks for Haley, like in the scene where it clicks for Chris.
Yeah. We were talking about the premiere last night, and it was a really great moment where the crowd was really into it. It was an emotional moment. That room was special because you guys work so hard on a movie, you're editing, you're all doing different projects, and last night it all kind of comes together and people are seeing it with you. I just want to know what it was like for you, and in general, I want to chime in as well, like what it was like to watch it with the audience last night and what that energy was like for you in that room.
Yeah. Honestly, it was overwhelming. I knew what was gonna happen, but every time a gunshot went off, it woke me up. I felt and I was next to TJ, who plays Sakani, and he was so emotional. So being next to him, he kept crying. You know, he couldn't control himself, and so I think just actually sitting with him and his mom and experiencing with them, like, changed it all for me.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for the interview. It was a pleasure talking. Thank you for telling the story.
Now, I had never known that thug life meant that.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Weirdly enough, people always argue Pac or Biggie. I'm a Biggie guy, and I love Pac, but I'm more Biggie guy. So I didn't really realize that meant that. Can you talk about incorporating that element? And I mean, I won't give anything away, but when it comes kind of through line towards the end and what happens, it's just so powerful. Can you talk about kind of incorporating that, what that means?
Yeah, thug life. When I was writing the book, and we were trying to come up with the title, titles are always hard for me.
Yeah.
And I was watching Tupac interviews, and there's this interview where he's sitting and he has his little boy in his lap, and he explains thug life because he had that tattoo across his abdomen. But he referenced the 1992 riots, which, you know, a lot of people associate those riots in Los Angeles with Rodney King, but it was also in response to the shooting death of a 15-year-old girl named Latasha Harlins. And Pac was saying that the hate that was given to Latasha affected the entire city of Los Angeles. And I remember thinking, wow, that's still relevant. You know, the hate that was given to Tamir Rice, that 12-year-old baby, that affected the entire city of Cleveland. So I was like, That's thug life. And I didn't do it in the book, but the way that they really bring that in the movie through Sakani is powerful. I sobbed. Every time I see that, I sob. And I think it's one of those ways that we actually really get thug life. We see it. We feel it through this young kid. And I have to give props to TJ. I don't know what you said to him that day that made him really get into that, but he brought it, and we feel it. And I hope that once they see it through this little boy, maybe they'll look at Tamir Rice in a whole different way and say, that was Sakani in his own way. So what's the thug life that we fed into him?
Now, one of the beauties of what you do as a filmmaker, and obviously with this story, is Khalil's character, while there's a short amount of time he's on screen, the presence, he's still in the film the entire movie presence-wise. As a filmmaker, his performance is so strong that you feel it the whole time, even though he's being mentioned, but the presence of him is there. Can you talk about keeping him alive throughout the film?
Yeah, the key is having a great actor. Now, it was about finding the right person to play Khalil, and Algie Smith came in an audition. He blew me away. I remember seeing him in the New Edition story for BET. He was great playing Raph Tresvan, and I just thought he was amazing. Because what it came down to, you got to have the love, the chemistry, and also the charisma and the likability, and Algie really developed that. And if that character did not work, the rest of the film would not have worked. And I thought Algie really did a good job really making sure that that happened.
So there's this scene that's, I'm still like, it blew me away, was the moment where Common and her Star are talking in the kitchen, and he asks her the question of, you know, since he's a police officer, would you shoot a white man? And he says, I would have him put his hands back on the car. I thought that was a really powerful moment. Can you talk about that scene in particular and what you're trying to convey there?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, Angie had that scene in the book, and the scene is written almost line for line. We really wanted to make it clear what all the complexities that a black officer would be able to have. Also, we wanted to have an understanding, what is a police officer thinking? And Carlos is like a father to Star, you know, when Mav was away in prison, and that relationship pretty strong. So he's very honest in that scene. But what we really wanted to do is just to show what he would go through as a black officer, and him being as completely honest that he would have done the same thing. It creates sometimes biasm within our own culture, within our own self. So that's what we want to get across.